Okay, thanks. So, welcome everybody. I am Anna Arner. I'm the curator at the North Dakota Museum of Art. And on behalf of the museum, I want to welcome all our panelists and our moderator, Dr. Cynthia Lindquist, as well as everybody who's able to join us. So before we jump into our discussion, I thought I would provide a little bit of context about the exhibition, Moving Tradition into the Future. And then I will segue and introduce our moderator, Dr. Cynthia Lindquist, as well as the artists who are joining us today. So I do have a PowerPoint with some images. So if you can bear with me, I just need to get share. There we go. So the exhibition, Moving Tradition into the Future, came into being through a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts with a matching grant from the Windrose Fund of Common Counsel Foundation. It allowed the museum to commission Native American artists from or connected to North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Minnesota, and Manitoba, Canada. This commission asked the artists to examine what it means to be a Native artist living in contemporary times, what beliefs they want to pass along, and how visual language remains alive today. The commission helps create the visual history of today, which will then become the knowable past for future generations. So not everybody has had an opportunity to see the exhibit, and so I just have a few slides showing the install of the pieces. And also I wanted just to, give a shout out to each of the 9 artists, not all of whom were able to make it today. So here's just kind of a blanket view. I have a few more slides. Okay. Here is one view, and it's from each end, and I know it's kind of an oblique angle, but here you can see Taryn Laskin, Avis Charlie, Ben Peace. Back here is Angela Babby's work, and way in the back, I have a detail of Maggie Thompson's work. Over here is Keith's piece, Mikayla Patton's, Delia Touché's right here, and way in the back, Teresa's. Also want to mention that the show is open until October 5th. So if people haven't had a chance and are able to please come see it in person. So because those views kind of showed the works at an angle, I thought I would just show each one individually. Here on the left is Maggie Thompson's piece. And just to kind of clarify, her piece was actually acquired through a North Dakota Museum of Art matching grant purchase. In the center here is Keith BraveHeart's work, Stone Boy. And here is a detail of Mikayla Patton's piece hanging in the gallery. Over here on the left is Angela Babby's work. Center, and again, Delia, I could only get details. It was hard to get a whole view. This is a detail of Delia's work. On the right is Ben Peace's multimedia work. And over here on the left is Avis Charlie's painting. And next to that is Teresa Baker's. And then last but not least, partly because of the format, I had to give him his own slide, is Taryn Laskin's work. And so that's kind of just an overview. I can also come back to this if it comes up in the conversation. So getting now to the discussion. And I just want to say I'll be introducing Dr. Lindquist and the artists. For those of you who are joining us, I want you to know that there's going to be time for question and answers afterwards. If you look at the bottom of your screen, there's a section that says Q&A. You can type your questions in, and then I'm happy to share those with the panelists. And also I encourage the artists, if you have questions for each other or for Cynthia, to do that there. So now on to my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Cynthia Lindquist. or Tasunka Wikapi Wian, Star Horse Woman, who is a member of the Spirit Lake Dakota tribe, Fort Totten, North Dakota. She holds a doctorate degree in educational leadership from the University of North Dakota and a master's degree in public administration from the University of South Dakota. Dr. Lindquist's current role is the Director of Tribal Initiatives and Collaboration for the University of North Dakota, after serving as president of her tribe's college, the Chandeska Chicana Community College, or CCC, for 21 years. Under her leadership, CCC's physical campus quadrupled. They had 20 years of clean audits, and most importantly, student enrollment, persistence, and completion rates more than doubled. Among her key leadership roles, she's a founding member of the National Indian Women's Health Resource Center. She's a Bush Foundation Leadership Fellow, and she currently serves on the North Dakota Ethics Commission, Arts for Vets Board, and the Bush Foundation Board of Directors. So thank you for joining us today, Cynthia. And now to the artists. I'll begin with, I'm going in alphabetical order. So with us today is artist Angela Babby. So Angela was born in Everett, Washington, and she's an enrolled member of the Oglala Sioux tribe in Pine Ridge, South Dakota. She received her BFA in painting from Montana State University at Billings. Babby's artwork has been featured in professional publications, including Glass Art Magazine and First American Art Magazine. Her kill-fired enameled glass mosaics have won numerous awards at the Santa Fe Indian Market, the Red Cloud Art Show in Pine Ridge, Best of Show at the Native Pop Art Show in Rapid City, and the Northern Plains Indian Market in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. She's won the Best of Class at the Herd Indian Market in Phoenix, Arizona. She's currently part of an exhibition titled Clearly Indigenous Native Visions Reimagined in Glass, which opens on November 15th at the National Museum of the American Indian in New York. And after that, it will continue to travel all the way through 2029. And I just learned just a moment ago that she's also included in the Jackson Indigenous Art Market in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Thanks for joining us, Angie.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So also with us today is Teresa Baker, whose work you see here on the left, that's in the exhibition. Teresa is an enrolled member of the 3 affiliated tribes in Western North Dakota. She was born in Watford City, North Dakota, and then lived for the last several years in Los Angeles, and if I understand it correctly, is in the process of relocating to Montana. She recently has had solo exhibitions at DeBoer in Los Angeles, at the Scottsdale Museum of Contemporary Art in Scottsdale, Arizona, at Pied à Terre in San Francisco, Interface Gallery in Oakland, and most recently, just opening in early September, she has a solo exhibition at the Contemporary Art Museum in St. Louis, Missouri. Her group exhibitions include the Ballroom Marfa in Marfa, Texas, the Nerman Museum of Contemporary Art in Overland Park, Kansas, and Marin Mocha, Nevada, California, and Anthony Meyer, Mill Valley, California. Teresa is a 2022 Joan Mitchell Fellow, and just this year in 2025, she received a Guggenheim Fellowship. So thanks for joining us today, Teresa. And I will now introduce Keith BraveHeart. So Keith BraveHeart is an Oglala Lakota visual artist and arts educator. He's a citizen of the Oglala Sioux tribe, the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota, and received his BFA from the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and his MFA from the University of South Dakota in Vermilion, South Dakota. His work within art and community is diverse and includes exhibition curation, arts and culture programming, and community engaged arts initiative. He currently serves as Associate Professor of Art at the Oglala Lakota College. BraveHeart is committed to enriching and encouraging a tribal arts continuum across the Northern Plains region and expresses a sincere acknowledgement of being a good relative. Thank you, Keith, for joining us today. And Mikayla, I'm not sure if she has been able to join us, but she is hoping to. She has she's at an artist residency, but I'll introduce her just in case she joins us later. Mikayla Patton is Oglala Lakota, is a multidisciplinary visual artist whose creative work intimately engages materials such as recycled handmade paper, porcupine quills, glass beads, and natural elements to create sculptural objects and installations. Through her studio practice, Patton employs Lakota mythologies and adornment practices to explore themes of healing, growth, and renewal. Patton holds a BFA in studio arts from the Institute of American Arts. Currently, she's based in Pennsylvania, and she'll receive her MFA in sculpture from Milton Avery Graduate School of Arts at Bard College in 2028. She's exhibited her work nationally at venues including Chiaroscuro Contemporary of Art in Santa Fe, Landmark Arts in Lubbock, All My Relations Gallery in Minneapolis, and the Contemporary Arts Center in New Orleans. So, and next I'll introduce Delia Touché. So, and we have a detail of her work on the left. Delia was born in Devil's Lake, North Dakota, and is part of the Spirit Lake Nation. They are Sisseton, Wahpeton, Dakota, and Assiniboine artists based in the Midwest. Delia holds a BFA in drawing from Minnesota State University, Moorhead, and an MFA in print media from Cranbrook Academy. They have exhibited at the M Contemporary Art in Ferndale, Michigan, at the Plains Art Museum in Fargo, North Dakota, the art galleries at Austin Community College, the Cranbrook Art Museum in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, and in Bulk Space in Detroit, Michigan, at the Minnesota Center for Book Arts in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And currently, they are featured in a group show titled Queering Indigeneity at the Minnesota Museum of American Art. And you've been busy in 2025, Delia. She's also in Rearranging the Stars at the Missoula Art Museum. This year, Delia was also awarded an NACF Lift Award. So thank you and welcome. Thanks for joining us. So I will now step aside and stop the share and allow the discussion to continue. Thank you, Cindy.
Mitakia dapi. Hey shunko wakan we chak biwi amakia pi. Hey ish mini wakan oyate edwati damakota. Thank you, Anna, and for saying my Dakota name, Tashunko Wichak Piwi, which translates Star Horse Woman. And I want to start by saying, why do you have an educator, academic, administrator, being a moderator for these very gifted artists? But I'm most grateful for the North Dakota Museum of Art, their outreach to Indian country, and what they try to do to engage us, including today's webinar. It's kind of I believe, a new venture in that. But, and if you have not had a chance, please come to the University of North Dakota campus and see the exhibition. I've gotten to see it a couple of times, and each time I walk through it, I'm in awe. It's like, how do you come up with this? How do you think this through? How do you pick your medium, let alone the whole piece in that? And then I know a couple, Angela and Teresa, have gotten to see the exhibit, have been on campus and at the museum. But when I walk through it, I also have a better appreciation for museums, curators, thank you, Anna, and then the staff who help put it up on the walls or hang or whatever, because they have done an excellent job with each of your pieces and how it's displayed, because I think it was somewhat arbitrary, but the guys that were hanging kind of figured it out, the height, but the flow. And I'm just in awe of that creativity because it's beautifully done. And I appreciate you showing the pieces on tech and the PowerPoint, but again, people, you need to come and see the pieces in person because each one tells a story, each one is unique, and yet the collection, moving tradition into the future. It's such an awesome theme and thought, and I'm really pleased and honored to be here with you all, to get to know you all. Like I said, I got to meet Angela and Teresa, and I'm just inspired. But that's what I want to start, and maybe I believe Mikayla did join. I saw her hand, I think, and maybe because she has tech issues. Let's start. Mikayla, the first question, what did inspire you for this piece? What were you thinking about? What led you to what you created to be part of this moving tradition into the future? And did we lose Mikayla? I can't tell.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
All right, yes, she's still here.
Oh, hello. I apologize. Can you repeat the question?
What inspired you for your piece? And maybe Anna, with your tech help, you could bring the artist's piece back up as they talk? I know you've got great tech help.
Yeah. Mikayla, do you have something, or should I pull up the image that I have of your work?
Go ahead and pull something up. I don't have anything.
Okay, that's totally fine. That's why I have it.
There you go. And again, Mikayla, I'm just your pieces are also beautiful, and they're so very different, and yet each piece, it's like it has its own contribution to the whole theme of this exhibition. So how were you inspired? What were you inspired by? And tell us about this piece.
Well, I think kind of my practice overall, I'm very much inspired by a lot of cultural objects that I've got to spend time with in various collections. And I trained as a printmaker, so I kind of trained working with paper a lot, but kind of as my practice has progressed, I guess, I've gotten to more making paper myself. And so for this particular piece, I had actually started out with one large sheet of paper, kind of playing with the surface itself. And I don't know, I really thought a lot about like the process of making parfleche. I'm getting a question here. And so for this particular piece, I just wanted to sort of, I think earlier when Anna was mentioning my bio, it was methodologies. I think you said mythologies, but it's actually methodologies. It's the kind of process of making certain objects. And so that's kind of how my process is. And I wanted to be able to bring like that same process into the show as well, including like materials that are kind of very that come from, being working with like cultural practices like quill work and beadwork. And so I included a lot of that material into this piece as well. This piece being kind of like a trunk for belongings and of storing certain anything you can think of can go in there. And that's kind of like why I like to have these pieces kind of bound up and bound together. I hope that answered your question.
Oh, we're off to a great start. So why don't we keep going? And I'm gonna arbitrarily pick Delia if you wouldn't mind going next and just talk a little bit about what inspired you, or what were you thinking when you created yours? And again, Anna, if you can bring up her work.
I sure can. Can you guys see this? Is this visible?
I have no idea.
All
I don't
right.
see anything.
I will redo it. My apologies. There we go. Sure. Okay, I was there a moment ago. Nope, not FaceTime. There we go. How about, can you see this now?
That's it.
Okay.
There you go.
Yes. It was kind of a long journey to like land where I landed with this piece because I was going through a lot of transition in my life. I was moving back from Michigan and then like going away from college, and I was like, how do I continue on my studio practice? And I didn't have the same like equipment or access that I did before because I usually work very print heavy. And then I kept changing my mind about what I wanted to do. That's my biggest flaw is I can't commit. And then along with this transition, I lost a lot of my family members. I get a little emotional talking about this, but I was just inspired. I worked with Native American youth at Moorhead Public Schools, and I was teaching them how to make hand drums and just telling them how life, like when you make a drum, a life is associated with it. Sorry, I didn't think I'd get this emotional, but I forgot how many drums there are, but there's about 18, and they represent the family I've lost throughout this.
Yeah.
And I was just really inspired by like things they said to me, or just like I'm sorry, I think I need a break.
Yeah.
We can
But yeah, it
come.
was mostly
can-
about like transition and loss.
Yeah. Yes, and it's beautifully done, Delia. And we can come back because I think the pieces do express what you were going through. All right. How about Keith? Can you talk a little about inspiration? And I also want to acknowledge Oglala Lakota College as a former tribal college president, and thank you so much for being part of the tribal college system and helping our students in that. And again, my frustration with technology and photography, as good as it can be, it's like, people, you need to come and see these because they're just absolutely beautiful and the colors are just amazing. So Keith, welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Lindquist. It really is a great pleasure to be here, and it's also I'm really appreciative to share this space with all of you. It's an incredible effort, and I also like to thank the museum and the staff for really kind of pushing this forward to have an opportunity like this for contemporary Native art of our region, our homelands, to be visible, but also to have a platform to speak about it a little bit more today as well too. I'm very impressed by all of the critical thinkers that are here with us as well too, and a lot of you educators, you guys who have scholarship behind you as well too. That's really great. I will also make an acknowledgement too that and I guess an update that I've resigned from my position as assistant professor of art at OLC last year because I was really hoping to get back into my creative practice. Being full-time educator really caused me to juggle priorities in life. And I really saw that my art was suffering. I didn't really get into my studio as often as I wanted. In fact, this piece here was one of the only pieces that I really had a chance to really work through. So it took me a while, and I also admit to procrastinating and waiting a little bit more because trying to put other things in front of it and realizing that it really deserved a lot of attention and focus because it was meaningful to me. The inspiration behind this is in the theme, moving traditions into the future, moving traditions forward. That's how I was kind of like thinking about this. But I was kind of holding on to the idea of like, what does that mean? What could the moving tradition, is it more so moving creativity as well? I see these as very inseparable, you know, tradition, lifestyle, culture, creativity, art. All of this is all one thing when we think about it through indigenous perspective, and I was holding on to it with a Lakota centric perspective. And what I saw was the creativity behind it all, and how this is conceptualized in this, I think, philosophy that we hold, which is kind of summarized in the Lakota word Ohankishni, which is kind of like a translation of forever. And it's thus thinking critically and abstractly sometimes too. I think about what is time? How do we understand the present? What is the contemporary? But then how do we also recognize that the now, the identity that we hold today in the present is really informed and holding on to, connected to the past with the intentions of the future. And so a lot of that started to come through in my visual expression. And I'll also simply say, just as I do have a lot of confidence in saying that I'm a contemporary Lakota artist. And what I'm most greatly inspired by is simply just seeing the people as they exist today in the art forms that represent them today. So I'll pass it on to the next because I have to attend to my children real quick. So I apologize for that too, guys. Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us and hanging in there with us. All right, let's move on to Teresa Baker.
Hi, everyone. I'm really pleased to be here with you, and thanks everyone for sharing your work. I'm so happy I got to see it in person. Yes, I agree, Cindy. It just never, photos can never compare to the material and texture and everything that goes into all of your work. So it's a real pleasure to see it. It's a beautiful show. One real clear kind of starting point for me with this work was location. At this point, I've kind of moved around a lot and I've lived a lot of different places in my adult life and even growing up. And so it was a real pleasure for me to know that I had a work coming home, coming back to North Dakota where I'm from. And so I was just thrilled about that. And so I thought a lot about what do I want the work to feel like? And a lot of my work is very process-based. It works on a real intuitive kind of reaction level to shape and color and form. But then overall, I'm always thinking about how do I want it to feel, especially with abstraction. I think that's kind of the strongest language of abstraction is feeling and visceral. And so I wanted there to be a real strength. And that felt like the kind of number one priority is I want this work to feel strong. I want it to be representative of where I come from and who I am and family and land. And so I really started with that point and kind of went from there. And I started with this outside shape, and then all of a sudden I wanted these kind of lines to come down. I was really thinking a lot about kind of the angles and lines of a breastplate, and so that's where that came from. And then from there, it really just I allowed the work to kind of evolve. And so that's about it. That's the most important points anyway. So thank you.
I've got a few more questions. We're going to come back, but let's move to Angela, Babby, Angie, and we'll have her
Hi.
bring up. There you go. Yeah. So what's your inspiration?
So this piece is one of my favorite pieces that I've created. I actually made it initially to be part of a group show that I was participating in with all these different other artists in multiple mediums to tell the really detailed story of the Wounded Knee Massacre. And so all of these Lakota sculptors and poets and musicians and all these artists came together to tell the story through Cairns, which is the Center for American Indian Research and Native Studies. It's it's on the Pine Ridge Reservation outside of Martin. And anyway, I learned so much in participating in these group shows just about history. And this piece was really difficult to make. It's just like, even if you don't really think that you've got trauma, but trying to make this initially, I just kept procrastinating till I almost missed the deadline. And it turned out that other artists who were in that show also had the same experience trying to talk about that whole issue. But when I made this piece, I really wanted to show how all of these genocides that go on end up just destroying the culture. So I wanted it to really look very beautiful, like really rendering the photograph, which was a black and white photograph that I'd seen throughout my childhood. But I really didn't realize that that was literally a pile of women and children. I just, in black and white, you don't really get that, the kind of emotion that you do if you show literally the culture laying there on the ground, and then using the black and white image for the military in the background. But it's absolutely as close as I could get to making it that photograph. So it's really important to me to make it really close to what the photograph looked like. So I just feel like, you know, we need to tell our stories, because the more we do, the more the general population learns about what actually happened. And right now, you know, we're trying to get rid of history altogether, and we cannot allow that to happen. We need to remember what happened in the past. So that's what I was thinking with this piece.
Mm. Yeah, and it's quite powerful, as are each of the pieces in the show. Angela, I want to continue with you, and because you couched yours as telling story. I think our audience, particularly young people who might be watching or making this available to them, what drove you, or how did you get into being an artist? Was there a pivotal moment in your life or something? What kind of led you down that path?
Well, I tried really, really hard not to become a professional artist. I didn't believe that it was a practical thing that you could actually make a living at. So I picture framed, and then I started my own decorative painting business, and that went really well. And I got really burned out because I was working so much, and I took a pottery class. And while I only got to go to like 3 of the classes because I was just too busy. And while I was in there, somebody said, "Oh, that's really neat." This kind of cheesy pottery thing I was making, and they said, "Oh, you should be in the herd market." And, "Oh, but you got to be enrolled to do that." And I had no idea what the herd Indian market was. So I applied, and I had, you know, some watercolors and some acrylic paintings, and, you know, just some different little works. And I was terrified because I'd never been to a native market even, and I was in it. And so that really caused me to, when I got there, here's relatives that I didn't know about, and I just felt like I'd met, you know, my tribe, my people for the first time. And I did kind of feel like a fraud because I'd never been to a native market before, but it really changed my life. And then of course we got rained out, and in college I had done a lot of my sculptures with stained glass, and I had I knew about glass, and I had a large collection from working at a stained glass factory. And I just said, if I'm going to keep doing the art shows, I need a waterproof medium. And so that's really what caused me to decide to attempt to be an artist as a professional. So yeah, it's very random things that happened ended up getting me to be a professional artist. So I don't know if that answered it.
Oh, yes, yeah. No, because it's your story. And that's what
Yeah.
I'm asking each of you to just tell the audience or participants here about your journey. How did you get to where you are? What was there a moment in time, something pivotal, family, community, schools, or whatever? And Teresa, you want to respond?
Sure, yeah. I never thought I would be an artist, and I went off to college in New York City. And so I think for whatever reason, I just knew I wanted to go to the biggest city. I was like, that was my main goal when I was leaving high school. And it was there that I decided to take a art class, like a drawing class, because I thought maybe I'd actually go into like costume design or something with clothing or something in theater. And it was kind of that one first class that I became interested in finding, oh, like I can take this a different direction. And then also it being living in New York City too, it really opened my eyes to a lot of different like Western abstraction. And so seeing artists like Richard Tuttle, like really kind of um um artists that were like pushing boundaries with material and letting material kind of be enough, like that was it. And then so I got so excited and I was like, oh, I really understand this, and this makes, yeah, just makes so much sense. So that just sent me down this whole path, and here I am making abstraction. So
All right. Keith, how about you? Do you want to tell us a little bit more about your own personal story and how you got to where you are? And for the audience, I want you all to know if you should look up these people because they're like world-known artists and quite accomplished. And it's just amazing. But Keith?
You, yeah, I think I had a creative urgency as a youth, like I think many of us do. And I think that all people kind of have that at some point. It's just that we're kind of discouraged maybe later to not really pursue that or to continue on with that. And so I don't think that I really had any kind of scope of art beyond what was just in popular culture as well too. I was aware of Western society's art world. And I think that I never really thought more about what was immediately around me in my own tribal community. But there was precious art all around me, even since very, very early on in my life. I remember watching my grandmother making her star coats. She didn't go to school at all, but she was a disciplined artist that I really regard as super influential to me. But it was a pivotal moment when I think was nearing the end of my high school. And I was offered an opportunity to attend a summer art program. It was an intensive, like 2-week art camp at the University of South Dakota called the Oscar House Summer Art Institute. And I was aware of it since, being a freshman, ninth grade, but I had always kind of talked myself out of it because I thought of it as schooling. But I think I did encourage myself, but I think it was now I can reflect back that I was listening with, I think, more patience to those supports that were saying, you should go and do this, because they were recognizing something within me, probably what I was doing naturally through these little drawings and stuff like that. And so when I attended, it was an eye opener and it was a life changer because it really exposed me to contemporary modern native art. And I think that Oscar Howe's work was so powerful that there was an unspoken kind of like transference that occurred. And I saw something beautiful and transcendent within his work that's hard to kind of like explain, but I can definitely hold in my heart that I know that that was the moment that gave me the encouragement to move forward. And so I took discipline, dedication, commitment. I wasn't outstanding academic, but I stayed with it. And even afterwards, just trying to make sure that I forced myself to continue my practice, even when it wasn't paying my bills or it wasn't really providing me any kind of like professional development. I stuck with it because I trusted it, like it was gonna return something back in a good way. And so I've been with it ever since. And that's what I always share with any young listeners is just they might not be yet aware of what's surrounding them and what's kind of pointing them into their path, but it's there.
Yes. Delia. can we call on you just to talk a little bit about your personal self and how you got to where you're at as an artist?
I guess I always joke that someone told me I was good and I rode that high until now. Um, but actually I didn't want to go to nursing school. I worked in healthcare for like 10 years and I was like, actually, I hate this. I don't want to do this. And then went to MSUM where I met Anna and just had like great mentors just guide me, and then eventually to grad school. And like my art practice is just how I can feel closer to my relatives and to my culture. And I also joke to myself, I don't know how to grieve in a healthy way. So I make art and then I cry during the process.
All
Yeah, that's
right. And
the short
Mikayla,
gist of it.
yeah, I've got some more questions, don't worry, but Mikayla.
Yeah. Well, when I was in high school, I wasn't great academically, but I knew I really wanted to go to college. I really wanted to go to college, but I didn't know what I really wanted to be, and I felt like art was kind of just always, I wouldn't say always available, but I had access to it kind of the last couple years of high school, and somebody recommended the Institute of American Indian Arts. And so after I graduated high school, that's where I went. And it was kind of my first time kind of living away from home outside of like, the restriction of school or whatever. And it was kind of cool. Like I got introduced to a lot of different mediums and processes of making art. And that was really inspiring. And it took me a while to finish my undergrad, but I got to spend a lot of time looking at contemporary Native artists in school. And I really fell in love with artists like Sonia Keller Combs and Faye Heavyshield. They make really amazing, beautiful works. And I was just kind of like, I want to do that. I want to be able to do that. So I just kind of kept going and kept making. And so my work has shifted a lot throughout the years, but I feel like it's helped me grow a lot as an artist. And yeah, kind of similar to Keith about like I didn't really know where I was going with it. I didn't really like I had family members that were like happy that I was just going to college, but also like what is art gonna do for you? Oh, I feel like artists kind of always get that question or kind of go through that. And I don't know, just kept with it. I've had mentors that just kind of like always told me just never stop making work, regardless of what it is. I don't know. And so I just kept doing that. And now I'm here. So I've just kind of been doing a lot of random things, I feel like, but I've learned a lot through it. And now I'm here.
All right, so if you can tell, so Mikayla, I'm going to start with you for this next question. I'm curious about your technique and the medium that you use, and does it change, or do you kind of stick to what you?
Um,
How does that work?
well, my technique, well, I was mentioning earlier that I grew up learning how to do beadwork and kind of had to self-taught with quill work, but I use a lot of, at least I think that I do, I use a lot of techniques that come from making traditional items, whether it be like adorning clothing and just, anything that's making cultural objects. And I feel like I pull a lot from those practices. And in terms of like gathering material, paper is something that was always available. There's a lot of people are always getting rid of paper, and so that's why I've been able to access a lot of paper in that way. Getting just scraps of paper anywhere I can get it. And it depends on where I am too. Like I've done a residency where I've asked like libraries to donate paper to me. And sometimes a lot of that information is interesting because like I've gotten paper that had like outdated, research on misinformation of Native people from North and South America. So like there's like all these different conversations that happened in my process of making. Recently, I've actually been getting a lot of my recycled paper from my mom. My mom works in an office, and so she happens to be shredding paper a lot. And so that's kind of an interesting like way of gathering material. And then like right now I'm working with paper, but it's like the first time I'm currently in upstate New York at the Women's Studio Workshop. I'm doing a residency and I'm making a book, an edition of books. And it's kind of my first time working with like natural fibers. So I'm working with flax and cotton and abaca. And so it's really interesting to see the difference between how these materials kind of act. Like with recycled paper, it's a lot of like really over processed papers. A lot of it is like bleached and chemically treated sometimes. And can you still hear me? Okay, great. I just got a thing that said my internet was unstable. But yeah, my process is kind of always fluctuating in terms of like just understanding the material itself and how they interact with each other. Like me stitching quills directly into the paper, that's something that comes from just stuff that I grew up with, trying to rethink these same practices, but with different materials that I have access to. Yeah, so I'm hoping I would love to work with like metal and other types of materials, other even natural materials, but it's a lifelong thing, so it takes a while to get there. Yeah.
Oh, good. I just shredded a big bag of paper. I was like, and I threw it in the dumpster. I should have saved it.
No, it's also another thing too. When I open up that door, a lot of people offer, and then it ends up being too much at once. And then I'm like, I have to kind of stop. Like, okay, maybe wait till like the next couple projects if I get there yet. Yeah.
Yeah. Delia, what's your technique or the medium? And you kind of use different things.
Yeah, I guess when I was talking about transition, I was like, oh, how am I gonna make prints? But like with this, I was like, oh, I have an abundance of like deer hide and bison hide. So I started making drums, and it kind of like involves your whole body. And then my grandma and my great grandma were like great star quilters on Spirit Lake Nation. So just kind of like I started quilting to be closer to them. And then just kind of like you always have to have your blanket with your like drum. So that's why like every set of drums has its own like packaging style. So they have to be packed up pretty precise, and like the goal is like they'll always like be together even when they're stored. And oh God, what was the rest of the question? My process?
Well, just talk a little bit more about like your technique and the
Yeah.
medium you use.
Yeah, a lot of deer and bison hide. And then I use like cotton fabric for quilting, and then I adorn it with beads as well. And I use like some screen printing methods, but I also kind of like went back to like I was a painter for a while, but then went back to painting, and I'm like, I kind of like this, but I still am more drawn to like print and book arts and textiles. It's a little bit faster for my chaotic brain.
All right. How about Keith? You've had a couple of minutes to think about this question. So want to speak
Sure.
about your technique?
Yeah, well, I think painting is the medium that best satisfies my creative urgency. Now I say painting is my heart. So I do enjoy working diversely, but I will always return to painting, and I always prefer painting. And so for this piece in this exhibit, that's what I chose to go with. And I think that that's really what I think I feel most kind of like present in is in the medium of painting. And so I've studied painting, and I really appreciate the world and the history of painting. I'm really fascinated and drawn to the indirect painting techniques, which are pretty well known through the Renaissance movement. And so I like to reference that as something that's outside of the traditional kind of mindset of what a Lakota painter might, start to like develop a statement of what their painting is about. I'm also very much in belief that I carry the continuum, which is a lineage of us as Lakota pictographic artists, where we did paint representationally as well too. So a lot of that is what's kind of combined and what I like to work with. And I'm really also heavily drawn to utilizing the creation stories. We call them the Ohunkanka, these narratives from long ago about the beginnings of the origins of our time and space and place and all that. And so that's really the content that fuels my work currently.
Oh, thank you. Oh, this stuff is just so interesting. Teresa, want to talk a little bit about your technique and or the medium that you use?
Sure, yeah. I've been using now for maybe, I don't know, 7 years or so, I've been kind of using the same materials, which is yarn and different hides, buffalo hide or deer hide, and then willow on AstroTurf. And so it's a little maybe unusual in terms of like a canvas, but it was kind of a 10-year search. So I feel like it's kind of a real like talking point because I was always searching for my canvas. Like I tried paint and I tried, I think my work kind of lives between painting and sculpture, but it's so material driven. And all of a sudden this AstroTurf, it's like I like kind of accessible materials and I like to heighten them and feel like they really change once they're on the wall. And so there's something with that shift, like the transitioning a common material that is very exciting to me. Uh and yeah, it really, I think it's so like material based practice and it was finding the AstroTurf where then I could bring in the natural materials and I could bring in cultural materials in a different way, and everything kind of fit together for the first time and kind of answered a lot of my searching for many years, what I was doing. So
Yeah, and maybe we should note that Teresa's pieces are huge.
yeah,
The photo that was shown kind of didn't really the scale.
yeah.
Yeah, it's something, and I did touch it. Let's not tell the museum or Anna and the workers at the museum, but because it's like I knew what it was, but it's like, really, that's what this is? It's AstroTurf?
Yeah.
And it is. Yeah.
Thanks for bringing up the scale, Cindy. It is like, I think that one's maybe 8 feet tall by 6 feet wide, something around there.
Yeah.
And I like that it kind of gives you that unknown quality for a while, but then it also can act like these other things. And there's that kind of question it poses a little bit. And much like, a lot of folks have already mentioned, like growing up with seeing family members make work or make items or whatever it may be, I think a lot about that handwork, so a lot of my pieces are, in the end, everything is hand sewn on. And so I feel like that real connection and like the transference of like being an artist and kind of, changing, and that energy sort of living in the work is really important, and seeing the artist's hand, that's like my favorite thing. So.
Yeah. And Angela, you kind of touched on it in your earlier responses, but why don't you talk a little bit more about your technique and the medium? And again, her piece also is aside from just being a beautiful piece, there's different things in there.
Yeah, it's I really I was accused at my senior show of by artists looking at an artwork. They didn't know that I was standing right behind them, and they said it's all about process. And it is. I love process. I started out sewing actually, and then went on to college and started studying art in college, because I studied every major that I could think of before finally ending up in art. So the glass part of it, really, I'm completely obsessed with glass. It's just like, it has so much going on. And when I worked at the glass factory, I learned so much about, you know, what glass can be. And I've always been kind of obsessed with color and how that it causes an emotional reaction in you. And then the mosaic part of it, you know, you really don't know what it's going to look like until you put the mortar on it at the very last step. So it's just painting for me. I loved painting, but it was like, it was never done. You could always come back and look at it and think it wasn't done. But with the mosaic, you have to, once you decide you're done, you don't get to see it till you mortar it, but it's over, and you you can't go back and fix it. It's just what it is. So that really is kind of why I work the way that I do. It's just surprising, and I feel like when you're in the creative space and you're making something, you're kind of wide open to thinking of new ideas for the next project. So it's just like getting in touch with the cosmos, the energy of everything, and you think of things that while you're working that you never would have thought of if you weren't in that special creative space. But again, going back to the process is what really gets me. I enjoy the phases of going through processes to achieve something brand new.
Yeah, yeah. All right, we're gonna have one more question. And then so I'm gonna announce if you have questions, they're supposed to put it in the chat box, right? And then we're gonna try to respond.
In the Q&A part, because the
Okay.
chat only goes to the panelists. So on
Okay.
the bottom of the screen, people can see Q&A.
Okay.
We'll read
So
from
if those of you who are watching and listening to us, if you have questions in general or for a specific artist or for Anna at the museum, please put them in the Q&A thing, and that's how we're going to end up this session. But kind of tying into what Angela, what you just said about the process. So and again, bear with me, I'm a non-artist. And I have my own ways of doing things in that, and sometimes there's anxiety and stress and joy, and even at points and times I think there's healing. And so I want to ask that about your work, and specifically as an artist, both personally and then the work itself, the piece, especially the piece that you have in this exhibition, Moving Tradition into the Future, is what joy or what healing did you feel, and or are you trying to convey? And Angela, if you don't mind, could we start with you?
I really feel like my work really gives me, I don't talk that much about, you know, I don't really talk that much. So my work is really a way for me to say specifically what I think about things, and you know, and to be completely honest about stuff that I'm thinking about. And I have a tendency to be quite political. and you know, I like that my medium is very shiny and colorful and flashy, so you can kind of suck people into the conversation with the beautiful materials, and before you know it, they're understanding what's being said, but it's too late because they're already, once you're looking at it, then you have to think about whatever the statement is that's being made with. So I know that when I get angry, a lot of times I'll make a piece that kind of goes through, you know, whatever I'm angry about, and and then it's locked down, and I usually write up what I was thinking while I was making the piece. And so then a person can read what I was thinking and then look at the artwork, and I don't have to tell them about it, because it should, if an artwork is impactful, it will affect people all by itself. So, and there's no right way to interpret a piece of art. So I don't know if that answered it.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, no, and it's your story.
Yeah.
Delia? So again, the
We were-
question, I guess, is
Yeah.
about as you do your piece or pieces, whatever, your art, is there joy? Is there healing? And I think we kind of feel that with you today in that.
Yes. I think that like I go through a lot when creating work, just like emotionally. And I think with like print and sometimes quilts, it's like you don't know what's gonna happen until like you put it through the press or you pull your print. So that's kind of like the weird, exciting part about it. Don't know what it's gonna look like. So I don't know. I'm just an emotional person, so I feel like I feel a lot when I'm making. And I don't know. Did that answer your question? I'm just in my own world today.
Well, and I assume that's kind of what you hope when people see it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it as Angela stated, everybody interprets however we interpret in that, but sometimes I think maybe an artist you're trying to convey something, some type of a message or story.
Yeah, I guess what I was overall trying to convey is that I missed my family after being away for so long. And being a Native person, I just think I grieve differently, or I have to, or I have been forced to.
Yeah. Well, on a personal note, Delia, I am from Spirit Lake also, and I looked at your piece several times. I had to walk away from it because it did evoke for me those pandemic years. And when I was home, and for me the loss, and I'm like, oh, look at how, because I knew how you were telling somebody's story individually, and yet there's a collectiveness to it, and so as I was remembering some of the Kushis and grandpas who left us and all that knowledge, it was sad, but it was also hopeful, because for me it was like, oh, but I knew them, I got to know them, I got to hear their stories, and then I got to see you and your art. So, oh, look at this is a Spirit Lake artist. So, yeah, and so to me
It's such
there
a
was,
powerful piece.
yeah, it was
You.
just a great conveyance for me. Teresa, how about you?
I think that, a lot of the time, what I want to convey in the work is this feeling of, it is joyful. I think my work is predominantly joyful, but also that feeling of awe a little bit, that kind of feeling that landscape gives you. I think that's why sometimes I'll reference landscape in the work a lot, is that kind of awe of like giant expanses, and that just overwhelming kind of beauty of those places, and then everything that those places mean and hold. And I think in a lot of ways I'm but I'm like trying to recreate this kind of way I was raised, learning, like spending time outside, but also understanding like the real importance of land and spirituality and the stories and everything that is tied to it. And it's such a felt thing, and more than words can even really convey. I think it's so specific on how a place feels and how where I'm from feels and how the people feel. And so I think a lot, I want that work to like kind of just have that. And so I think I'm always kind of chasing that. And through that is a lot of like maybe thinking about I don't know. Yeah, I think it's predominantly joyful in a way, and thinking about all the positive kind of but I don't know if it's necessarily just positive, but it's just like the depth, it's just the depth of these places. So yeah, I like that question, Cindy. I think there's a lot to think about in that. So
Yeah. Keith.
There's a lot of I feel like there's value in my work, and that's definitely the way that I approach it with responsibility, that I'm expressing more than just content, narrative, identity. I'm really, I think, responsible to my tribal collective, to the lineage that I hold, to my relatives, that I incorporate something that leaves a message. And so my intended audience with this piece was definitely for future generations of Lakota youth. I opened it up for all viewers, and especially more Indigenous youth, so it's not like specifically only for Lakota, but it is. And I do that because I want them to feel empowered. I want them to take this kind of encouragement away at some point down the line, like I did when I was viewing Oscar Howe's work, and to maybe have an impact and to see themselves in however that might make sense to them at that point in their life, that they can carry that they can feel like they do have a relation. And I at this point in my life now and in my career as an artist, I feel like art is spiritual. Art has so much dimension to it, especially when we put a lot of faith in it, that it is authentically native, indigenous, Lakota, whatever we might identify it as. It carries with it a lot of amazing elements. And so I know that when I'm making art, that I have a lot that I'm kind of doing, and I try to be conscious about it as well too. But I think that what I feel most hopeful for is that this will also reignite a really sophisticated, heightened return to visual communications amongst Indigenous peoples, that we can remember that we have that. And I think that that's also something that's a bigger advantage to who we are, that we can engage with conversations and dialogue across generations, across even barriers of communication, that would help us, I think, really strengthen, regenerate those cultural foundations, where we are like really emphasizing the importance of being good relatives, or having family ties, this kinship protocol, whatever that means to us, or even simply just trying to kind of make somebody think a little bit more in their own kind of like place as well too. Just have a little moment of like presence. And so I like the opening remark too about seeing these artworks in person, because that's gonna be a whole different experience than seeing them on filtered screen, or even hearing somebody talk about them or whatever. It's like you got to go have that experience for yourself as well too.
Yes, and walking through a museum is and when I do that, I like being by myself, but then there's times where like, no, I wish somebody else was with me. Or I was fortunate when I first walked through and Angela was there, this artist, so I got to actually talk and engage with her as I was viewing that. All right, Mikayla, do you want to respond to this? I think maybe final question in general, but we do have Q&As also coming up here.
Can you remind me the question? I'm so sorry.
Okay, how does or is your work as you do it both joyful and healing? And is that part of both for you personally as an artist, educator in that, and or is there a message in that healing and or joy that you're trying to convey?
There's definitely a range of emotions, I will say. I mean, I think everyone knows that, like, you start a project and it's really exciting. And I think during the process, it can feel healing. And then sometimes, like, well, with me, we'll hit a wall, and then it will get frustrating. And then something's not working, or if maybe my idea kind of ran flat halfway through, or like different things. And to answer your question, I think it is very joyful, and it's such a privilege to be able to like experience all that. Yeah, and it is healing. Yes, of course.
All right. Well, I have 10 after, so we've got about 20 minutes. How are we going to handle the Q&As, and are you going to?
I'm happy to read them, or would that work fine if I just read the questions coming in, or would you prefer to do that,
No,
Cynthia?
go ahead, please.
Okay.
I'm not very tech savvy.
Okay, so and again, reminders to people attending, and also to the artists. I know Mikayla also wanted to ask a question. We have a little Q&A thing at the bottom, and that's where you can share a question. So we do have two that have already been submitted, and so I'll just start with the first one that we got. This comes from Gregory Vettel. And I'll read that. And it says, please speak about the roadblocks that Native artists face beyond the so-called normal ones that all artists face, if any.
Ooh, that's a great question. Any volunteers to start? Okay, I'm going to pick on Keith as our male, but no, you kind of alluded a little bit to that in one of your responses earlier.
Well, I'm definitely not an expert, and I'm not trying to, kind of have that vibe here at all. But I mean, um, there's a lot of history and a lot of reality, and just a lot of like present, I think awareness that a lot of people don't carry outside of indigenous communities. I mean, there's a lot of impact. We heard about trauma, but even like just oppression, oppressive systems that Native people live through federal policies. That really is, I think, affecting what I sometimes see as like a identity crisis, cultural identity crisis for some Native artists, especially contemporary ones, when they're working through that for themselves in their work. And I feel like they're trying to find the answer, maybe even solutions to that through their work. And so I've heard many statements talk about that just in my travels out there in the Native art world. And so I feel like that's definitely a roadblock. How can they feel belonging, centered kind of confidence that they can then empower more of what their, I think, kind of confident maybe statements could be in their artwork. There's so many other things that I can definitely call out, but I know this is a large conversation to have right here. But I also immediately thought about just the titles associated with Native artists versus artists that's just all encompassing to everybody else in the world. And why do Native artists even just have to have proof of identity, tribal enrollment for certain opportunities that are out there for them in the art world?
That's a great response. Okay, others, I'm not going to call on you, even though I picked on Keith. Hopefully in a good way.
I was just gonna jump in and follow with kind of where Keith ended, and I think just talk about some of the expectations of being a Native artist within the art world. And so what does that mean? So I think navigating that and I mean from like the larger audience, what is an expectation of what is a Native artist? What are you kind of supposed to make, or things like that? So I feel like that's something that at least I personally, I can't speak to everyone else, but has navigated some of those questions and ideas of categories. And I think that is part of the title of the show, like moving tradition forward. So there's a lot in that of like, what does forward momentum mean, and what are we taking from, and what does contemporary Native art, what is that, and what is it doing? So
Yes, that's right on, Teresa. That's a good point to bring out. Anyone else? Okay, should we go to the second question?
So the next question is, it's from an anonymous attendee. Please help me with the ways to verbally or non-verbally express appreciation and gratitude to Indigenous artists.
Ooh, that's another good question.
Yes.
Angela, you want to try to respond to that?
I think, you know, just by interacting with the artwork, and then if you have the opportunity to just talk with the artist, it's a way of opening up a line of communication with people you may not ever talk to. So even if you just are looking at something and you want to know about it, that is in and of itself showing an appreciation for the artist's efforts just by taking part in the conversation. So I does that answer it?
Yes. Anybody else want to respond to that question? Delia or Mikayla?
I'm happy to repeat the question too, because if that's helpful. It was asking about how to verbally or non-verbally express appreciation and gratitude to Indigenous artists.
Okay, I'm going to break the mold. And my answer is like, buy the piece, support the museum.
Wait, that was gonna be my cheeky
Well,
answer.
and I'm sorry, but in my
But I was like,
capacity
do
as
I
a,
be cheeky and be like, can you just buy my art so I can make other things?
you know, because I just, yeah, you know, support the museums, those who display or, you know, whatever, go to the fairs, the showings and that, you know, talk directly to that artist, you know, whatever. Don't quibble about the price.
Follow me on Instagram.
Well,
Like
except
and
I mean, sometimes
subscribe.
I want to, you know, I'll barter, you know, I'll barter or whatever in that, but yeah, so yeah.
That's a great answer, Cindy. It's very true.
Yay, thank you. All right. And Anna, I think we should end with the one of the artists' question, because that's a great question.
Yeah.
And maybe we can get some responses in general.
Well, I think Mikayla, you indicated you had a question for your peers. Was that correct?
Oh, I feel like mine might, I don't know if it's off topic. It was just kind of a random question. I was just curious what people are reading, what things they're listening to that pertains to their work that they'd like to share. You know, in the studio, I'm always listening to podcasts. I'm all around with different topics, and I'm just curious what other artists are listening to or reading about.
Well, why don't you answer your question, Mikayla, to start the group off?
There's this podcast called On Being, and there's an interview with Layli Long Soldier that's really beautiful, and she's just talking about it kind of pertains to her book Whereas, and some questions in regards to that. And I just really I really enjoyed the way she spoke about her own work in a really intimate setting in this podcast. And yeah, so that's one I recommend listening to.
Ooh, good
On
one.
Being on anywhere you can get podcasts.
Okay,
I
I'm
like
writing it
that
down.
podcast, Mikayla. I
I
like
love
that.
that podcast.
Do you have another one, Teresa, since you're answering also?
You know, I feel like this is a little bit of a cop out, but I I have three very small children, and so I'm not reading as much as I want or listening. And I get to the studio and I just love silence. So I don't have a lot of great recommendations right now. But when I do read, I love looking at native poets. I love poetry, and I think it has a real tie to abstraction. And Ophelia Zepeda is a one poet that I tend to look at a lot as well. So recommendation there.
There you go. Delia, you want to take a stab at answering Mikayla's
Um,
question?
A book I'm reading is called Apple Skin to the Core. My studio's a mess. I'm not sure who writes it. And I just read Post-Colonial Love Poem by Natalie Diaz. Otherwise, I listen to a lot of true crime and supernatural stuff.
All right. Keith.
I actually really prefer music whenever I'm creating, and I absolutely stick to that all the time.
Yeah.
So I don't really get into like podcasts at all. I've been encouraged and told, like, recommended by many artists for multiple years now, but I'm just sticking true to my music because that puts me in where I need to be. But if you do visit my studio and where I'm working, you will find books open, even just a bunch of different kind of documents spread all over. And a lot of it is art history, kind of nerd stuff, theory and crit kind of stuff all over the place. Notes from like different times when I was in different seminars and whatnot, trying to revisit because I'm just like, take a break and I let something come across my eyes, and it definitely sparks a new idea. And it has me, helps me go in a new direction sometimes when I'm just open to unpredictability and arbitrary kind of just adventures sometimes as well too.
All right, Keith, you must tell us what's the music.
It's all over the place, and that's a cop out as well too. But I mean, a lot
Okay.
of what I was focused on in my youth, I'm stuck in that era.
Name a song, Keith. Just name a song.
Hmm.
I don't know. It's just diverse. I can't name a song. Sorry, I absolutely can't.
Right, eclectic. That's good. That's probably your artist. Anything and everything. Angela, something you're listening to or reading?
Yeah, I would be lying if I didn't say that I listen to a lot of politics. But my favorite thing to listen to is Radio Lab. I've listened to pretty much all of it over and over again. And then reading wise, I just came across this book by a relative of mine, or not a relative, but yeah, she really is a relative. Her name is Tracy Hoff, and she wrote this book, Blending Cultures, A Journey of Identity in Lakota Country. And she had all this information about her grandfather and her dad and their experiences. And it was so closely related to my own dad and grandfather. I always wondered what was up with them because they didn't talk much. And that book really opened up my eyes to why they were so silent. It's just like when somebody goes to war, they don't talk, they don't tell you about their experiences, or going to the Indian schools. Nobody ever wanted to talk about that. And so that it just, I don't know about other people's experiences, but yeah, my dad and my grandfather and my grandmother for that matter just really didn't talk about their past at all. So that's why I really like that book. It was like actually getting to talk to them about their experiences. So that's mine.
Thank you, thank you, and thank you all.
Mhm.
Well, I want to just say thank you, Padamia, to each of you. You are gifted. And I'm honored that I've gotten to see your work in person, but also that the North Dakota Museum of Art asked me to facilitate this, even though I was a little scared and skeptical about doing this. It's like, what, I'm not an artist. I know what I like, and I like lots of things in that, but actually I enjoyed this. And you've opened my mind and heart in different ways, even as an elder. And that, and hopefully likewise for our audience and participants. So Nina Wahpeton, Mitakiwasi, thank you. We're all related. And I'll turn it back to Anna.
Thank you so much. I'll just echo what Cindy just said. Thank you so much. This is exactly what I was hoping to make possible, because the show is closing in less than a month, and not everybody was able to make it. Also, there were 9 of you, and so this idea of being able to have you have an opportunity to interact with each other, and also each piece is so powerful, right? So this was an opportunity to kind of unpack some of those ideas, and so thank you. And as you know, we're recording this. We also see this as kind of an archival activity, right? So maybe 20 years from now, people would want to look into what is this show moving into the tradition, and so I'm very appreciative. I will say there were 2 more questions that popped in. I don't know how people are feeling about that, or should we kind of just, they were actually directed to specific artists. Perhaps I could, is that all right? Do we have a few more minutes? Are you okay with that? If I share those questions? So there's one that came in from John Rogers, and it's for you, Teresa. And it says, Teresa, you spoke about abstraction and how it helps convey feeling. Can you elaborate on that? Or can the other artists address that aspect of their making about abstraction?
Sure. I think I really believe that an object's power is to be felt and seen. And so I think language can be a real barrier sometimes, particularly with abstraction, I should say, as an art form. I think the job is of the object to do its work in person. And so I find that I think it's felt like the same way that a performance or music might move you, or going to see theater, or going to see a movie, or whatever these kind of visual performances, they give you a response. And I guess I really believe in the power of an object. Certainly that has come from my cultural understanding, and so that belief is there in that object. And I think that's it for me. That's it. And language only goes so far. So
Thank you. And there was one last question, and this is from R. Schließmann, and it's for you, Angie. It says, in your Cold Truth piece, the colors in the foreground drew me in. Then the realization of what I was witnessing evoked tears. Is this your most powerful piece to date?
I hope that everyone gets to see that piece, because it has a tendency to make people cry. When I got with the artists that came together to do that show, I ran into one of the other artists that was in the show at the Herd Museum Indian Market, and we both just stood in front of that thing and cried. I really think it's one of my most powerful pieces, and I really want everyone to be able to see it, because I think it changes you. Images can stick with you, and yeah. I don't know if I answered that. Yeah.
You did. Well, the works will be in our permanent collection, so if people can't make it to the exhibit, at least know it has a home here. And so But our hope is for those who can to come see the exhibition in person. So Cynthia, Angie, Delia, Teresa, Keith, and Mikayla, thank you so much. And thanks for the questions from the attendees. And be well, everybody.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Nice to meet you all.